Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, not so long ago, I was standing on the north end of, I suppose it was the far end of the North Pier in Blackpool. And I was waiting to go on and be part of a show with Katie Hopkins. The lovely Julia was with me. And this chap came up and approached me. He says, "I watch your show and I'd love to be on it." And I said, "Well, what gives you the notion that I will have a complete stranger on my show?" He said, "Well, I'm into wellness and well-being. I've been doing this for 36 years. I've been learning and teaching. I am a practitioner and I've got lots to offer. And also, I'm fun." And I thought to myself, if there's one thing we need on the show is people who are fun, because that's one way of helping ourselves get better, is laughing at everything. So I'm sure we're going to have a good conversation with my guest, whose name is Magnus Mulliner, and he joins me now. Magnus, lovely to see you again.
Ditto. It was an absolute pleasure. I mean, the timing, just walking along that pier, and there you both were, and there we were, and the picture was taken, and you were brilliant on stage. And as I said, the some of the things that you reminded us or shared with us was like, wow,
Oh, well,
we
that's
are
very
all in the same, yeah,
we are all in the same
matrix.
predicament. Yes,
Matrix.
and the same matrix.
I often, you see, I know I take my red pill every day, but I'm still in the matrix.
Yes, yes. It's trying to get out of it. I mean, as much as we say we want to be out of it, and we're desperately looking for living in the private and not being in their jurisdiction and not going too many times to the NHS for having medical interventions if we can jolly well help it, and looking at alternatives, it is a battle to stay, self-contained and out of the system, because we've relied so much on the system.
Well, it's what I call part of learned helplessness, and in one sense it's insidious, and it's throughout society. Now, I'm not here to be anti anything. I think doctors are fantastic for what's called acute traumas. So anything but this falls off immediately. Don't even collect £200. You need to go directly there. And I
Yes.
would say diagnostic modalities. So if you're going to go for tests, apart from, in my opinion, I would say no to mammograms. That's to women and men, and you can go for thermography for that. And I would say no to PSA testing. So there's too many false positives. But apart from that, go to your doctors.
Fair enough. The thing is, I mean, I found we had a cause when only recently, little Joe fell off a wall. We were going down the thing, down our prom here, down where I live on the south coast, and a little kid, 4-year-olds, running along, and it's like, "Be careful." "Yeah, yeah, I'll be careful." Next minute, like this, bang, great big gash on his head, blood's pouring out. Julia's going, "Oh my God, my son is going to die." And so people have gathered round, and we think, should we go to A&E? And immediately the first thing is, we've got to get him to A&E, get him to a doctor, make sure everything's not no concussion and brain damage, and see if he needs stitches, etc., etc. But then there was that moment of, oh, hang on, we don't quite trust hospitals as we used to. So there was a bit of a debate, and then it was like, okay, no needles, right? No needles in there. Make sure you were. And we're going through this whole sort of security safety check. Meanwhile, the little boy is screaming his head off. He needed a suture. Is it called a suture, that you glue it together?
Yeah.
And yeah, without stitches. And he was fine. He was fine, and he still is fine, and all of that. But it was just that moment of, oh my God, that we're having to reappraise something that we would do without thinking.
Yeah. And I think, once again, I think we're in the same boat. And it's not about making so-called them wrong. I think really it's about, the crux of it really is us living our own dream. And it's all linked with this thing called freedom and us living in a democracy. And it's not about making, I call them puppeticians, the politicians wrong or anything. It's about, I don't mean to swear on your channel.
No.
It's about taking radical responsibility. And
radical responsibility, not just ordinary responsibility, but radical.
Radical responsibility, because you can maybe see where this has been and may go. And I think that we've often been so misled and misfed, no pun intended, with the nutrition that we may get onto, that I think we get the opportunity to, well, I teach what I'm required to learn and know, you see, but I've been doing it for so long, right? Because I need to learn it. And hopefully as a side effect, I pass it on to others. But for me, it's about reminding people so that they can learn how to fish, so they're not dependent on me. Yeah.
Yes,
And I
that's
think
right.
my simple thing is that the, in my opinion, there's only one dis-ease, only one. And there are only two ways of creating it: toxicity and deficiency. Let me give you some examples. Have
Please
you
do.
heard the phrase, "You're as mad as a hatter"?
Yes.
Right. So what caused people to go mad? Well,
Mercury in the hats, wasn't
right.
it?
So when you're putting the machine on the bowler hat, you're licking your lips, you're dropping it in, and around the bowler hat it went. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
just one basic example. Now, the other thing I said was deficiency. So, in other words,
Yes.
that what I call the first brain is the stomach, and that's the bacteria eat first, and over maybe 80% of our well-being is literally in the gut. But how many people, when they consume food, are thinking, "Is this like reselling me?" CELL, you know.
Ah, yes.
But but
Reselling. Very good.
but leading on to that is the deficiency side. So let's come up with some examples because you can help me with this. If
I'll
I was
try.
deficient in vitamin C, what could I
Yes.
be labeled with?
Oh, scurvy.
Right. Well, actually, they used to call us limeys, did they not?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Because,
So we would be deficient in vitamin C. Okay.
right.
So my next question, and the clock's not ticking, I know. If we were labeled with berry, what would we
Yes.
be deficient
Oh,
in?
now that one, you have got me on that one.
That would be B1. So it affects the heart, the nervous system, the brain, shortness of breath. So they're all signs and
Yeah.
symptoms. People can go and duck, go it or whatever. So we know that's what causes beriberi. What about pellagra or pellagra?
Oh,
What's that a deficiency in?
somebody help me here, would you? I'm beginning to look like an idiot now.
No,
What
not
do
at
you mean,
all.
look like? Oh, yeah.
Niacin.
Oh, niacin.
Yeah,
Right.
B3.
B3.
Yeah.
What's in? Where do you get niacin from, other than little pills in natural world?
Well, my suggestion would be to look for what would be the best sources.
Hmm.
But what I found is that a lot of the foods, if they, as I say, get to know your local farmers now or pay your doctors more later, would probably be best if they're local,
Yes.
if it's biodynamic or organic, and it's usually what I call with eyes foods. So something you run after with a bow and arrow or a spear or something,
Yeah.
that's more likely to have the most concentrated form. Okay. But it's a water soluble, as in the B complex, of which we've talked about niacin, B1, and we talked about niacin. So those are just some examples. But what about, the other one would be vitamin D,
Yes.
cholecalciferol. Well, rickets is the basic one, dementia, yeah, and certain forms of cancer. So we know toxins and deficiencies. Those are the only two that then go with the label. So if you're driving along on a car, as an example, and the light comes on, let's call it annoying sign and symptom, you don't remove the bulb or stick a plaster over it. I mean, that's not a genius formula.
No, that's very true. Because
So,
if you do that, you won't know if you're going to be ill in the future.
right. And
Or
if you did do that, then that comes with more side effects, effects, which would lead to more lights, more annoying symptoms on the dashboard of your car if you use it. It's a bit like, who would put diesel in a petrol car? I mean, that's just silliness. But if you and I did, we'd probably learn and do it once.
yeah, absolutely.
So, for me, it's just back to basics that people can take responsibility. And when we talk about nutrition, let's talk about foods. And you touched
Yes.
on it, with something like niacin. So,
Yeah.
people, I believe, can get all their nutrients from local farmers. However,
Right.
let me ask you a question, or let me make a statement and see if this is serious. If you were a conscious individual and I asked you, what's the most important 6 inches to any man? What would this conscious man say?
Well, if he was conscious, what is the most important 6 inches? Yeah, there's a lot of people now beginning to sort of think, hey, 6 inches, is that all? Go on. It could be
Topsoil.
in. Oh, of course it is. Topsoil. Yes.
So, but because of poor husbandry, we've taken
Yes.
more than we put back into our topsoil.
Yes.
You can see where this is going. So even if it's called Cavallonera or some cruciferous vegetables, carrots, whatever, it still lacks that which it previously had in the way of magnesium, sulfur, molybdenum, copper, and all the other.
Yes.
So
Yes.
from my point of view, that's where then supplements would come in, or taking something supplementary. But in the meantime, the best thing we could do is provide the body with anything that it requires. And remember, the bacteria eat first.
Hmm.
So then the question could be, well, what was your great grandfather or great grandmother consuming? And then I can guarantee you this: it was organic, it was local, it was seasonal, So these are just some reminders because as I said, we've gotten a bit lost here. And so with that information, what is the right fuel for Richard? What is the right fuel for Magnus? Well, I can guarantee you it's not something that causes inflammation or irritation in the first brain, which I call the gut,
Yes.
vagus nerve communication with this second brain. So it's obviously putting in. So in other words, if you have an intolerance, an allergy is something different. Obviously, you've heard of nuts and maybe seafood, where instantly people can go into a shock and they're in a coma or whatever, and then they're dead. I'm not no. But an intolerance is something that keeps pecking away over time, and it could take a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years. So I have a simple saying: if you love it, rotate it. 72 hours roughly. So if you had something on a Monday or a Tuesday, don't wait, don't then consume it until say Thursday, Friday. Rotate it, because it takes up to 72 hours to be absorbed, digested, assimilated before being eliminated on the body. So what kind of food? Rainbow diet, throughout the day, all the colors of the rainbow.
I mean, I think just going back to your point about the soil, which I think is at the moment one of the things that we have definitely lost over because of the last 80 to 100 years of monoculture and the crop spraying and also the lack of regenerative farming. This continual taking the same crops out of the same bit of soil and not rebuilding the soil and using artificial fertilizers and
MPK.
Goodness knows what.
Yep.
And then your whole point about what did my grandfather and previous people eat. This is something that needs to come back. And although you say, support your farm, at the moment the big problem is to get farmers to understand exactly this is what we need to bring back, rather than just growing commodities which then get turned into goodness knows what and end up in colourful boxes full of other things on supermarket shelves. Which have
serial killers. That's CEREL, yeah.
Exactly.
There's probably more niacin or B complex in the cardboard than what's actually in that which they consumed. And,
yes.
And these are just reminders, because again, a lot of us have gotten lost thinking it's about the gustatory or the olfactory, the smell or the taste, and that's only part of it. Really, it's again whatever I'm consuming, is that then regenerating, feeding me, reselling me?
Yes.
CELL.
I mean, thinking that this isn't rocket science, is it? I mean, this is basic stuff that most people seem to have either forgotten or they know, but because convenience, this wonderful word convenience, or the ability to just, I can park in one place and do all my shopping under one roof full of artificial light and cameras and actually scan it and do it all pretty much myself.
Track and trace,
track and trace your own food.
The information sold to China. Yeah.
Exactly. Probably trace it once it's on the way to the sewage farm as well. Who knows these days with nanotechnology? But that convenience has meant that people are now able to buy what they think is food. But for me, it starts earlier than that in terms of what we do in the family and gathering people around at meal times to sit together. Or the mother or the father is cooking with the help of perhaps the children around, so that real ingredients come together, and then the family come together and you partake that meal together and you actually experience it. Because it does seem that what's happened now with food is simply it's become a commodity, it's grown as a commodity, it's processed as a commodity, and you're sitting looking at a screen not having any clue what this is anymore and just going. And the connection between you, the food that you're eating, is so remote that the body's, is just going, here we go, more muck coming down, get ready to, get rid of it. But as a result, you're getting ill.
Well, you could lose, I believe, I'm reading some research a number of years ago, 40% of the nutritional value of whatever you're consuming if you haven't got the right, wait for it, this isn't in the example, on cephalic response, which is basically a signal from this to then produce hydrochloric acid. So 15 or 20 minutes before, if you have poor hydrochloric acid production, then you could have something like a lemon, you could take Swedish bitters, or maybe a lime or something to stimulate. But you're also talking about what the Mediterranean people do really well: sitting round communicating. You've got the gustatory, the olfactory going on, this is part of it. But instead, we're not being mindful about what we consume. So we just chuck it down our neck. And I'll tell you
Yes.
now, it's never, ever about the calories. Wait for it. It's about the information in the calories. What do I mean?
What do you mean?
Macronutrients. Macronutrients, obviously, which are fats and proteins versus carbs, and micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, trace elements, phytonutrients, cofactors, stuff we don't even know about that, wait for it, feeds this cybernetic being. Yeah, we've gotten lost, we've forgotten. So anything with a shelf life does not have a self life.
Right.
So you and I know that if we leave something outside and it has any information, which I've just reminded myself about, outside, it doesn't take it long to break down, as in Mother Nature's police force, which would be the parasites, the bacteria, the fungi, would be returning it to the earth. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, believe it or not, over 90% of is, wait for it, parasites, bacteria, and fungi. So that's just kibosh, the antibacterial, that's killing self,
Yes.
not a
Oh,
genius
yes.
formula. So, but again, coming back to the foods, because the longer the shelf life, that's because enzymes, well, look at things that go past your eyes. Been heated to what, 150 degrees Fahrenheit? No enzymes, no bacteria. The proteins turn to a beta protein, not recognized by the body. And so I often say that we're the only dumb species on the planet that drink milk beyond our weaning years, but we're the only dumber species that drink somebody else's. No other species does. Now, better alternatives rather than cow's milk, which contains 20 times more casein, which bodybuilders love, would be maybe sheep or goats. And if you get to know the farmer, raw would be best. And there's obviously a sliding down scale, but something which is more compatible to consume. Well, I don't want to talk about stools on this, on the Bristol stool chart and all the rest of it, but how it smells and how it looks and how often, they're all factors to well-being.
Yes. Now, it's interesting you say that, what you say about raw milk. Now, I have read a bit about raw milk, and milk's had a raw deal in the past, to excuse the pun.
Yeah.
Because raw milk, I mean, people have been drinking milk from sort of bovine animals since almost the beginning of time, because of the ease of production, I suppose.
Right.
And I've actually I've milked down at Dora's Dairy. I'll give him a plug. John Cook's cows. Julia and I have done it now 4 times. We've been there, and we're hoping to do a lot more of that because, and I've drunk raw milk, Jersey milk, and Frisian milk. We get our raw milk from Charlie's farm shop, which is 7 miles from where I live, and reading about raw milk, people can go on a raw milk diet and nothing else, and it clears up the skin. It feeds your bacteria. So I was interested then when you said it's not a good thing.
Okay, let me give you, and thank you for sharing that. There's a Professor Woodford who wrote a book called The Devil in the Milk. Incredible book. And it talks about A1 and A2 beta casein.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you're talking about the Jersey Frisian ones, they are A2 beta casein. And
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, those are more structure compatible for us to consume.
And it is A2 milk that he sells and drink and milk.
Right, right. So those ones, and it can take a number of generations or years for a farmer to change. My understanding is from one type to the other. Yeah. But again, coming back to it, I believe Lucretius, a famous poet or philosopher, once said, one man's food is another man's poison. So there isn't a one size fits all whereby this is going to be the best for everyone.
No. I totally get that, but it's just it's interesting. And speaking to John the farmer, who sells, that's his business, a lot of people have come along to him and said, "Oh, I'm lactose intolerant, and I can't possibly have your milk." But it's not actually the raw milk or the A2 raw milk that they are lactose intolerant from, and so they skip everything, and suddenly they find that actually they can not only tolerate that, but it's actually beneficial. But it's the pasteurized, standardized, homogenized, that process has made it into a poisonous fluid. You may as well just swallow some white emulsion.
Well, what was that joke? What's the difference between a poison and a pharmaceutical drug?
Well, a lot of money, I should think.
Well, follow the money, but it's dosage.
Dosage, yes.
So, so yeah, it is an interesting one. But as you rightly said, there's certain foods, like I know I'm intolerant to beef. However,
Are
from a
you?
titration, yeah. But if I have I get rashes that appear
Right.
if I eat too much of it. And even though it could, it's organic, it's local, whatever, it
Mm,
still doesn't agree with me if I have too much of it or have it too often. So, what's wisdom? Know thyself. Find out what best works for you. And you'll know if you consume something
mm.
because within a short period, probably less than half an hour, are you then craving for something? Are you agitated? Have you got a rash coming on? Jittery? Food affects us. It affects what we call fundamental homeostatic controls, the pH of your body, the autonomic nervous system, the neurotransmitters, the microbiome, and more. Oxidative, there's so many factors affecting the body.
Right.
But we've
Which,
got a bit lost into, well, it contains, I'm going to say it live on here because I used to be live on BBC Radio Cumbria back in 2008, 9. They invited me back once every month. And then they asked me, I think it was in January 2009, if I could do some about New Year's resolutions. And I think on my list of five or something, number three was sugar is a class A drug. Instantly cut off the air, escorted out, never invited back, no feedback, no nothing. Now, if you read Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert, PhD, if you read Professor John Yudkin's book, Pure White and Deadly, which was
I've
re-released
got
by,
that.
there you go, by Professor Robert Lustig, you will be
Yep.
reminded that it is. I mean, I think it's one molecule of sugar, it takes about 5 molecules of magnesium to be broken down.
Yes.
So
So
that's just
I can't. I
magnesium.
can't. I'm not good on all that technical stuff. You're obviously excelling on all that. But
Well,
Pure
it's
White
just,
and Deadly,
yeah.
absolutely. And that came out in the 1970s.
Well, one of the men that made us fat was Ansel Keys. He's an American researcher, and the light shone strongly on him, but it didn't with Professor John Yudkin. So basically, Yudkin just went and he wrote his book and
Hmm.
said, "If you're not going to listen to me, I'm telling you now," because I think there was 22 countries of which Keys selected seven to prove. Wait for it. His hypothesis. Wait for it. Saturated fat is causing coronary heart disease. Absolute BS.
Yes.
And that's where the light shone. And of course, that's where the corporations jumped on the bandwagon. That's why we have diet, whatever. I just said remove the last letter. That's what it's doing to you. And they're all on our shelves. And then aspartame, don't get me going on that.
I won't.
So,
Have no fear. I
so,
would. So I just
so
going back to because you're very very rapid in your in all the
my
information you're
apologies.
input.
Yeah,
So, no, it's all right. Going back to that Pure White and Deadly,
yeah.
what was what one of the things that I found really fascinating about the argument there, apart from the fact that clearly it's not a good thing, but it it's that notion that but it's pure sugar, as if because it's pure it somehow makes it clean and better for you. But of course that's like saying, well, it's have this lovely meal, but no, instead of having the meal, just have this bit which is in the meal, but it's pure poison. You wouldn't go, oh, I'll just have the pure poison bit, because that's the concentrated bit that's causing you the problem.
Well, it's
And
it,
so it's an interesting use of the word pure,
well,
or that the idea that you've stripped out all the good, like
there's
in
nothing in it though. The pure form of
yes,
sucrose. 99% of the population's addicted to sugar, but this is the deal. They don't even not know that they're addicted to it. Fructose, maltose, dextrol, mannitol, xethanol, xylitol, anything that ends in OSE, OL, or IN is a sugar. Now, I'm not vilifying sugar per se, but the fiber needs to come with it.
mm,
And so when you're talking about, well, fruit, some fruits will
yes,
blow your blood sugar, and that might not be a good idea just to eat that on its own. That's
no,
another thing I often remind, especially the men, is they need to sprout their nuts.
yes. I've always tried to do mine, but
So,
it's very difficult. You sit in a certain way with a
well,
watering can and see how it
absolutely,
goes.
and I understand you because we're men. But the thing is that if you put them in a glass of water and leave them overnight, that
Mm,
sprouting it removes without. I don't want to go too technical with aflatoxins and and all the rest of it. But all it's just soak them, and they're more nutritious. Drain the
right.
water, obviously, wash them out, but they're more nutritious, and then
What kind of
consume them.
what kind of nuts are we talking about?
Well, again, I would say to you, as long as you don't have any intolerances to them, you've got your
Yeah,
Brazil nuts,
yeah,
lots of selenium and vitamin E in there,
yeah.
cashew nuts, walnuts, almonds. Almonds have lots of wonderful information to feed the whole body, but it's best because all nuts and seeds and pulses contain phytates. It's like a phosphorus coating around them, which stops the breaking down of other nutrients when in the first brain. But if you soak them, then they just blossom. It's plant the
Even
seed.
they're not, even when they're dry. You're talking about like you buy a bag of dry nuts.
It would be better to soak them, but then if they're roasted or whatever else, then there are other things going on. But
Yes,
I
no, but
don't.
I
I
mean,
want
not
people
not.
to enjoy what they're doing. I don't want them to suddenly jump off the deep end and suddenly, you know, leave those things behind. It's just that nuts and seeds are best when they're soaked. They're more nutritious. They contain more vitamin A, B, and all the rest of the
Are they
stuff.
less? I don't know that I've ever soaked my nuts in that way. Um, do they go soft then? Is that what happens?
So on some of the nuts they will do, yeah, and they'll like turn purple. Will the cashews?
Will
So
they?
yeah, but just 12 hours, maximum 24 hours, wash the water
Right.
out and then put them in a bag and consume them with stuff. So the idea, because the two factors really, first of all, you need to eat the foods right for you. We talked about this, as long as it doesn't cause irritation, inflammation in the first way in the gut. And
Yes.
secondly, you need to find the right macronutrient ratio. What's that?
I
Fat
don't
and
know.
protein versus carbohydrates. So in other words, a steak, if that's your steak on a
Hmm.
food and a small amount of carbs, that might be just right for me. So that could be some steamed spinach or something or some kale or something. So
Yeah.
I require more fat and protein, and I might only eat once a day, maybe twice a day. I don't eat. I don't breaking the fast doesn't mean having breakfast every morning for me. I might not eat until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Hmm.
So
Yes. No, we tend to just have one meal. We
right,
might have we might have a handful of unsoaked nuts. My God, don't tell anybody. And occasionally, a bit of salad or
yeah,
a bit of maybe a piece of bacon or something, just to sort of break up at lunchtime, but not a meal, not what you would
not a
commonly
meal.
call
Yeah,
a meal.
and then it leads into
But
intermittent
most
fasting.
half the time, I'm so busy on the go, I forget to eat anyway. Until then, you go, blimey, it's getting on for five. I better light the SE and get some food going.
Well, it's funny that reminds me of that quote by Sherlock Holmes, wasn't it? He said to Watson or something that eating slows him down.
Yes, yeah. So going back to wellness then, and health being, and we're talking about food, and we're talking about the different nuances that food will give you, and finding your own thing. A lot, and of course, this is multi-million-pound business, and you can see so many books are out there on what foods and diets and all of this. And to be honest, it's never been it for me. It's never been an issue because I've just gone down the path of what do I like?
Right.
Where is it best to get it healthy, like local and fresh and
Mhm.
organic? That's very easy to comprehend. And if it's full of artificial flavors and salts and things and comes in a fancy box with a million ingredients and has it got anything to do with a corporation or Bill Gates, I'm running like buggery in the opposite direction, I can tell you. And
Yeah.
so fresh and healthy just it seems very natural, and I very rarely have any reaction. I know what foods I don't like, and we learn those.
I
So
think over time we do. You're slightly older than me, about six
thanks.
years, I think. Um,
60 years, did you say?
I said that was a Freudian slip. But I think that you're right. What I say with the clients is you walk around the outside, don't go through the aisles. So what my belief is over 90% of what's sold in Asda, Tesco's, Morrison, over 90% is dead, dysfunctional, denatured. What do I mean? That means when you consume it, it takes
Hmm.
more than it delivers to the body. So
Right.
it removes your magnesium store, not fully, obviously, but lowers your magnesium stores, your molybdenum stores, your zinc stores, your copper stores, your enzymatic processes, etc., etc. Yeah. So if you walk on the outside around, yeah, you're more likely to find that which is alive. And what do we know is alive? As I say, if you leave it outside for 24, 48, a couple of days, it starts to rot. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's because it has information to feed this, to
But you're
regenerate
not saying that
itself.
eat the stuff that's rotting, are you? Because now it's alive with
No,
maggots.
no, 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 no. You got to
No,
get there
I
before
just
they
wanted to
do.
check that.
Yeah, you got to get there before they do.
Yeah.
I call Mother Nature's police force.
Right.
Um, so there's one of my great teachers, Paul Check, has come out with so many sayings that some of them probably flow freely through my mouth. But Mother Nature's police force, yeah, and they're us. You know, you've got this kind of like war going on because when we're not healthy enough, then we get returned to the earth. Well, how do we stop that?
Mm.
Well, there are, I believe, again through the check principles, six foundational health principles: how you think, how you breathe, what and when you drink and eat, when you go to bed, and how much what I call creative movement you do daily. And when they're in yin and yang, everything's good. When you're out of
Yes.
sync, you know where this is going. And I say, why wait to become disabled? Do something about it now. I'm into prevention, not curing.
Mm.
So,
And a lot of the way of life. I mean, you talk about the creative movement, whatever that might be, cycling or just walking
yeah,
or dancing or doing some basic simple exercise. We know this. I mean, here's the thing. It's not like we don't know this, but we live in a very sedentary lifestyle generally.
right.
Unless you've taken up a career that is mountaineering, cycling, or something like that, or you work in, I don't know, a warehouse or something where you are actually moving boxes, or you're a builder or something. But a lot of people are sitting down and are encouraged to sit down and work behind screens. And then there's this whole games, watching telly, Netflix, Amazon entertainment thing, in which you are again very passive. And so not only does that involve not moving very creatively, but also the first one on your list, using the brain, because you're letting somebody else do all that. Whereas even in the old days, you used to go to a pub, someone would get round the piano, someone else would sort of start banging in time, someone might bring out a mouth organ, others would start singing, and people would dance. And you've got a combination there of creative movement going on, and you're using your brain and you're joining in. It's not a passive, community feel.
Community going on there. And that's beautiful, well shared, because these are the things that we've, in a sense, gotten lost because, as you alluded to, wait for it, we're being distracted. And as as we know, the most prized, precious possession that I have is my attention. So where is my attention going? Are you keeping up with Harry and Meghan, by the way? How
Harry
is
and
that?
Meghan.
Yeah. I mean, is that important? Do I need to know what?
What, Harry and Meg? Well, let me just tell you the latest. Hang on. And here is the latest on Harry and Meghan. And the saga continues with very interesting information which will distract you from everything important in your life, because Harry scratched his chin and Meghan made a funny look with her eyebrows. There you are. That's the latest. We'll bring you the next report in 10 seconds. Please manage to breathe in between before the next very... Exactly. All this stuff.
Look,
I
there's
mean,
a
I
ball
don't have
going across your screen. I think it's a leather ball. Another distraction.
a leather bowl.
A leather ball
Oh,
being
yes.
kicked across your screen right now. Another distraction. I'm not anti these things.
No.
It's just being aware that while your attention is going somewhere, where else could it go? Wait for it, to be of service to. Yeah. Not only yourself, but also your community, your family and friends.
Yes.
And yet, don't get me wrong, I've been to events. I lived in Calgary for a number of years. I've traveled the globe, and it's wonderful to go to these events and watch ice hockey or whatever else. But I just think we need to be mindful where our attention and attention are going. Yeah. To be mindful when we eat our foods. What does that mean? No mobile phone, no laptop, no computer, no news. Smell the food. Hopefully you prepared it. There's got to be something in there that's fresh and alive. And then
And crawling about.
seriously, so because we get organic food delivered every Wednesday, so I'm supporting my local farmer, and often it'll be in the fridge for 3, 4, maybe 5 days, and I think, I better, especially if they're greens, I need to wash these and eat them.
Yes.
Some of them have obviously gone off, and then all of a sudden there's the slug.
Still, yes.
I'll just wash it.
It's bigger now. It's bigger. It was small at the beginning of the week, but by the end of the week, the lettuce is gone, and there's this big sort of puffball going.
Exactly, but
Got
that's
any more?
nature. That's the thing that's alive. Obviously, there was a living
Yes.
thing on it. But it just lets you interesting times that you and I reside in, and I think
But the attention thing is a very important thing, and we're not. I was talking to somebody yesterday actually, and they're saying, the attention span of people is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and I said to him, I said, oh, I don't know. People are listening to these 1-2 hour podcasts, and he said, yeah, that may be true, but are they doing something else at the same time? And I said, well, I suppose I might be preparing food. And he says, then where is your attention? Either you're listening attentively to every word and you can focus on it and take it all in, or you're doing the cooking, or you're kind of flirting between the two, and then either is not really. And I thought that's an interesting point.
it's something else, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, I have to try and be attentive for at least an hour a day when I'm doing an interview with somebody so that I don't mishear or I can interpret what people do. And actually, that is quite hard work, especially if you're dealing with people who are talking with a lot of different words that I don't know, have never heard of, or concepts and things. But it isn't, a lot of people don't focus their attention for very long.
Somebody was telling me, I was on a call with a great man over in the States, and he was telling me, this is where TikTok's worked. It's like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
If you haven't got somebody's attention, within probably less than 15 seconds, that's it, they're gone. On to the next thing. And I think I was listening to two of the professors talking about how the iPhone has brought in more depression, more suicides, and other things with especially young girls. From, I think he said, from he's seen the curve happen around about 2012 onwards.
That does not
So
surprise me.
we're becoming more and more separated from, and I've even seen families sitting in the same room on their phone,
Yes.
doing their own thing. And it's not making it
Disconnected.
wrong again. It's just everything
No.
is about yin and yang. It's about balance. And also, I
Yes.
believe it's about you living your dream as opposed to somebody else's.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what a television, particularly things like soaps and these long series where people are having amazing lives, or in the case of soaps, incredibly drab, complicated, and horrible lives you wouldn't. But you're letting those people have the life that you could have, but you're just sitting passively allowing them to do it whilst you sit there having your unbeknown process, whatever that you're shoving into your mouth, and
Right.
and then having to visit the GP sometime later going, I don't know what's wrong with me, I keep putting on this weight.
And that's it. So the crux of it really is control your blood sugar. And, let thy food be thy medicine, the medicine be thy food. And I think that, if you control blood sugar, because me and a wonderful man, Graham Atkinson, I mentioned his name. He was a former pharmacist and also ran a practice locally to here. And we set up Your Life, Your Transformation. And basically, doctors invited, not referred, because they're not our patients, onto our course. And we got 7 weeks to remind them what they'd forgotten. And they were sharing their wins as the weeks went by. But they were becoming more empowered once we reminded them, going through the 6 foundational health principles, which I've just stated about 10 minutes ago, and just giving them the information for them to go and run with it, but also to look at themselves and say, where do I want to make those distinctions? I'm not telling you what to do. If I tell you what to do, you're going 180 degrees. So it's not a case of telling anyone, it's reminding them to the degree they want to listen. And we talked about that because we're often so distracted by, and there's so many things to be distracted by. And then, of course, you've got this whole fear stuff that's been going on. It's been really racked up since, end of 2019 onwards. And people just need to snap out of it, And how do they do that? Well, just become aware. Awareness is the first thing. And then just understand about the meaning of whatever it is. Like for me, for over 36 years, the meaning of health and well-being is number one. I'm on it. I'm healthy and I deal in health. Unlike a doctor who deals in disease and usually lives 10 years less than their patients. But put that to one side. The point is just these simple things like water. 0.033 times your weight in kilograms equals liters daily. You might have to rewind that to play it again. But so you're looking at between 2 and 3 liters just drinking, sipping it. I've got a pinch of Celtic salt in there. Yeah. So, but that's filtered water in either glass or stainless steel. That's stainless steel. Because there's so many microplastics. Plastic is not a good thing. But nutrition, control your blood sugar. Well, if you're stressed, you're not going to control your blood sugar. Also, if you're consuming, even if it's local foods, you're not going to maximize the nutrients because you're not at peace with what is. Yeah. I always remember a great friend of mine when I was in the States, he said, if we can all surrender and be at peace in the knowing of ongoing incompleteness, nothing is ever going to reach a point where I'm done unless you're 6 feet under pushing up daisies. So I often say anytime above ground is great. How do I want to be of service? But yeah, I do believe we've gotten lost so easily and so distracted, and our attention is key. But controlling blood sugar, And that can be different for everyone. Somebody could have an orange, an organic orange, and it can blow their blood sugar. Somebody else could have it and they're fine. So what do they need with the orange? Well, maybe those nuts that you and I soaked, we could crunch on them.
Or they might be a bit soft now if you've left them in too long.
There you go.
So, I mean, ultimately, I mean, what all of our conversation so far, it seems to me that, I mean, and for all the technical terms and clever sort of ways you've put that together, it seems to me, and I suppose it's taken me 60 years to sort of get to this point. Well, maybe 50, because in the last 10 years I have been thinking about these sort of things. Once the normal distractions of life, of finding a partner, getting a job, finding a partner, having children, having a house and all that, and maintaining everything, and then your children going to school, all of those distractions as well, which is again part of a society that has given us a formula that we're all supposed to do, which actually may or may not be beneficial in the great scheme of things, is that actually when it comes down to it, firstly, we need to thrive for ourselves. You know, life should be about thriving and having fun.
Right.
The way that the world has been set up.
Yes.
That we you know, as we pop out and we're being instructed all the time. We're being instructed. This is how life is, and this is the avenue we're all supposed to try. Which actually is taking us away from us thriving.
Indeed, I think today more than ever we have that opportunity to thrive. And you've touched on something that pinged in my mind. I made a little note that I do believe that being serious is a disease. Check that out. And I'll tell you why, because it kills passion. But worse than killing passion, it kills people. Hence the wars that are going on. Because I am serious. Whether it's religion, whether it's due to the military-industrial complex, whatever it's down to.
Yes.
The point I'm making is you being serious. So, and I'm not religious, but maybe in the eyes of pure potential or God, we're all children. And to the degree I'm an adult, that can be quite stressful. However, there are moments because, like you, our lives are no longer our own. We have children. Maybe we can learn a lot from them. We need to take on an adult way of dealing with certain situations, but we can do it peacefully and calmly. I think we're more likely to get the best resolution through that. I think Elizabeth Kenny once said, "He who angers you conquers you." Well, I don't be conquered. So I'm not going to get angry. So yeah, but yeah, being serious, it's yeah, not a good thing. I think, you know, find the humor. That's a wonderful question. Well, you may have heard that one day, Richard, you and I can look back and we can laugh on a situation. Yeah. Well,
yes.
Why the hell are we waiting?
Wait, yes, laugh at it now.
Yeah, exactly. Why wait? We could do that right now, but we need to direct that, what I call stinking thinking, going down the dark side, which is not being of service to me or anyone necessarily.
No.
Interrupt that pattern and replace it with one that will serve me through a smarter question. Well, what's the win out of this situation? You know, what are the benefits I hadn't realized? What new distinctions could I make that would empower me? And I'd enjoy the experience. That would be the addendum on the end of that. So then I can enjoy it. But when it comes to food and nutrition, it's fourth on my list, obviously, but it's critical because then you're more likely to be in a sound mind, wherever the mind is, to make smarter environmental and lifestyle choices. So the most powerful thing for you and I is how we vote. We vote where we put these, where we put these, where we put this, where we put this. And of course,
I wondered what was going to come up then.
Where we put those. That's how powerful we can. I'm sitting on a ball if you wonder why I'm bouncing up and down on a Swiss ball.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. So, you know, that those are powerful ways of voting. So whatever silliness is going on out there, I could still find out who my local farmers are. I mean, we have booths near us. Booths, they like to support local farmers. You can go into obviously the superstores and walk around the outside rather than going through the aisles. You know, these are smarter changes or choices you could make.
Yeah, I do tend to sort of walk around the supermarkets from the outside.
Right. You know,
by not actually going through those doors where all the cameras and the surveillance is going on, because it's not for me, thanks very much, anymore.
No. So these are things, and obviously there are many other, I think, useful tools for people to remember, but I think this one is mainly focusing on nutrition and foods. So as a recap, really, it's you need to understand that foods are either your friend or they're not, and you need to understand what that is. And the other thing is you need to get the right ratio of fat and protein versus carbs on your plate of food. So, an example, if I did break the fast, I would have some wild Alaskan salmon, and then I might choose to have some steamed Cavolo Nero. But there's not as much as that as there is the wild Alaskan salmon. And I'm satiated for hours. And intermittent fasting works for me. So I may find I don't eat for 20 odd hours. Yeah.
Right. So,
So,
so one of the things that people throw up as soon as you start talking about,
no pun intended.
uh, yeah, exactly. One of the things people often accuse people who are offering a different type of diet or a different way of eating, or especially when it comes to farm food, organic food, fresh food, on all of this, and in some ways they're right, but they're also not, if you like, is, oh, it's all right for rich people because they can afford all of this stuff.
Interesting.
And so we feel that we have to, go to the supermarket because I've got 2 or 3 kids, and
Yep.
it's I need to get those 2, pay now, buy later, buy 2, put 1 back, whatever these things are.
It's a tough one, is that one. And the simple thing I find, I think there was some research done decades ago on people just buying real foods, organic, biodynamic, or that hasn't been sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, redundanticides, or whatever else. And the fact was, my understanding of that research, and going back a number of decades, was it was still cheaper to buy real foods.
Yes.
Just eat real foods. Now, if you did feed the microbiome, the human cells, with real foods, you would be satiated, you would be
Yes.
fuller for longer, and you wouldn't have cravings for a class A drug like sugar or whatever else comes up. Yeah. And maybe
Yeah.
if you are craving chocolate, maybe your body needs some magnesium, not chocolate. But what I'm saying to you is that if you give the body what it wants, you are happier for longer. However, if you choose to consume something which has a shelf life that comes in a cardboard box or a tin, then you will find you are constantly snacking and eating.
And therefore it's more expensive.
That's the way it goes, you see.
Yes. No. Now we certainly find that. And Julia, who used to go to supermarkets, and that was her argument. But I've got these 2 kids; they're growing up. I need to go and buy all this stuff. And I was going to the farm shop, and I said, "Look, come on. If you," my exact argument was exactly as you said. If you eat properly, you won't need to eat. We only need 1 meal a day. You can have a few snack things like a piece of cheese or a stick of celery or something. Give them that, but don't keep feeding them the chocolate and the sweets, because you'll just be craving it all the time.
Yeah.
And these things are highly expensive for what they really are.
Yeah.
And that's where the money goes. And you see people filling up their basket. I mean, not anymore because I don't go to supermarkets, but you see them coming out with these trolleyfuls of goodness knows what, and you think, I wonder how many nutrients you've got there for that £100 of food you've actually spent, and how much also packaging and cardboard and stuff that is going to cause you inflammation inside your gut.
And that's it. You've hit the nail on the head. What separates the outside from the inside, from that hole there and the other one that we've touched on before, it's 1 cell thick.
Yeah, I
the
wash my
mucosal
hands
barrier.
afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what separates 1 cell thick from there to there, the mucosal barrier. That's what separates the outside from the inside. And by putting in the wrong fuel, you're actually damaging that, which then leads to all sorts of chronic conditions. Now, I do not deal in disease. I only deal in health. I don't know a lot about disease. I think a little bit more about health. So, but you touched on that so well. It's for people really to almost like to wake up and realize it is far better, in my opinion, to buy something that has information than something that has lesser information. Why do you think you
Or
start craving it?
inflammation.
Well, lack of information.
No. Better to have the information rather than the inflammation.
Beautiful. I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, write that one down.
But you're so right. That's exactly it. The information is what's going to sustain you and allow you then to create joy. And if
Yes.
something's not joyous, then maybe we have smarter choices to make. I'm not saying all the time, but you get where I'm going with that. So the crux really is to control blood sugar. And the only way of doing that is by putting in the right fuel. And the right fuel means something that doesn't cause inflammation or irritation. And you've got to get the right amount. And it's not about counting calories. It's never, ever been about the calories whatsoever. Yeah. It's about what's contained, as in the way of vitamins, minerals, enzymes, trace elements, and so on, that's actually in the food that's then going to sustain you. Because if it isn't in there, then your cravings come on,
Mm.
you know, and then your energy levels, I don't want to swear again, your mitochondria disappear. That's
Yes.
they produce the energy. That's actually a parasite, interestingly enough. But it's a symbiotic one. It feeds off the host, but also it allows us to move. So it is critical that people, I believe, shop around the outside and get that which we have been consuming for generations. Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
then
I
we'll,
know. I absolutely agree. And one of the problems that I feel that we have, you can tell people, and they can see the logic and they understand it absolutely,
Mhm.
but there is something, quite what it is, I don't understand. Is they'll go, yeah, no, that's really great, but, and then they'll or simply, but I enjoy a pizza. I enjoy having a curry every night, or I enjoy all these things, and I crave chocolate, and I'm never going to give it up, or I'm a sugar addict. I don't care, and in the end, you kind of go, well, that's fine. You now know, you've got the information. Don't come running to me.
Well, absolutely there is that. I often have a saying that you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't get it to think.
Hmm.
And even though they've been provided with the information, they still then need to make the right choices that are in alignment for them.
Yes.
And it's no different to pain. Pain's a great teacher of life. But to what level does it need to get to until people go, you know what? No, I'm going to change my direction, you know?
It's true, and sadly, of course, the highly processed food without the nutrients in it
Hmm.
is not helping you to think cognitively in the first place. So if you've been
Right.
brought up on that diet anyway, that leap, that sensible basic leap that should be just staring you in the face, that actually if it's grown locally and it's fresh out the ground and it's got nice nutrients and it hasn't come from a farmer that's sprayed it with poisons and Roundoff or whatever it is, then surely that's going to be quite useful to you. But it's that thought process. If you've been brought up with the habit of whatever you want in a colourful box,
Mhm.
in a nuclear box that will radiate it to buggery, and if that's your lifestyle, getting people to make that very simple and obvious shift
Mhm.
is very hard.
It is, and obviously it's got a Disney character on it, so we know not to go there. But you're right. These again distractions, and then we form these addictions. Now, what is an addiction? It's a repeated process that doesn't necessarily get our desired results.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, I have a simple one. I get people to do a form, and you just split it in two lines. You got addictions, party food, Mother Nature's food. And then we discuss what they understand as in an addiction, what they understand as in party food, and what they understand as in, what's real food, what Mother Nature's food. And once they're aware of that, then off they go, putting little ones where they want to put it. And they can look at it, and then you could do a simple maths calculation on it and say, well, obviously, from this, what you've done here, you've got something like 20% addiction. You know, your party food is looking like 50%. I have to do the maths on this correctly, don't I? It's 50, that's 20. So the other one's 30. Mother Nature's is 30%. Okay. What would you like it to be? So they're the ones making the changes. They're empowered to then look at it and go, well, I want, my addictions to drop down to 10%. Well, if you cut something out, what are you going to replace it with? Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but you're empowering them, you're reminding them, and then they can make the changes to the degree the meaning means that. If the meaning's not there, if it's not more than 7 out of 10, they're not going to make the change.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
and
there are
that's
some
okay.
people who say, I eat chocolate and I do this, and they do look slim and they don't get ill, and they do all this. And they said, I don't know what you're worried about. I've been doing all this. You health people, it's not affected me,
Right.
and you go, well, not now. It hasn't, but who knows what's, the one thing we do know is we all get older and we're all going to die, but some might die a bit earlier than
Right.
others.
Well, you can kid yourself, you know, for as long as you want to. But again, it's not about making it wrong. It's about living. See, for me, I have a 95 5% rule. So 5% is party food. I put the addictions in there as well. Yeah. So 95%, I know where the foods come from. It's likely to be local. It's likely to be seasonal. It may be organic. It may not be. Yeah. But that's me living my dream.
Yes.
Globes, yours might be 80/20. So if that's what you're living, so 20% of the time you may have your addictions and your party foods in there. However,
I,
you're going to add stress to your life if you're not living in the 80/20. If that's what you want, it
yes.
may be that you don't want 80/20. So you need to understand yourself where you want what you want to do, or pay the piper. You know where this is going. Yeah. It's not a genius formula, isn't this? Because it always leads down that way where the light bulb appears on your car. It's an annoying
Yes.
symptom, but trust me, you do not want to stick a plaster on it and carry on driving. You need to
No.
find the etiology or the root causes of it, go to the driver, and then make those changes, or more will appear, and then you're on polypharmacy. And that leads to more nutrient deficiencies as well in order to break those things down in the body. I'm not making medications wrong. There may be a place for them short term. However, this
There's a
is
bonfire
self-healing,
somewhere.
self-correcting itself. It does it. All I need to do is get over myself and out of the way and realize the sky is not the limit. But most of us were told it was, and we bought into that. That's
Mm.
BS. But take radical responsibility and just be mindful of what and when you eat and drink.
And that's it.
That's the invite. Really, it's not rocket science, like you said, Richie. It's not rocket science at all. But so the invite then is for people to just become aware. And I think with awareness is the first thing. And then if they choose to, they can make the necessary changes. But they've got to be aware first, and they've got to wait for it. Take radical responsibility rather than blaming because three fingers are pointing back. So once you do that, that's not working. So, well, I've always done this. Well, that's okay. You can change.
Yes, I mean one of the things that I've encountered with people who say things like, "Well, none of this, I eat the supermarket food, and none of it's been any. I've not found myself ill or whatever." But then they might say they might have a number of things like say headaches, or they can't go out into bright lights, or a bit itchy skin, and they're not putting the two and two together. They're saying, oh, the headache, oh, that's because I sit in front of a screen, or I've got children and they're loud, or whatever. And you think, yeah, but it may be more something that you've eaten.
Now, often to check I've got the right audience, I'd often ask the question, especially with medical people, do you think your headache was caused by the absence of an aspirin? Hell no. So it's partly what's partly in an aspirin is white willow bark. Comes with other stuff as well. It's been branded as aspirin, but mostly I think 70% plus is dehydration. Most of us are dehydrated. You can do a simple test on the skin and see how quickly it springs back to how hydrated you are. Yeah.
Right.
For some people, it might take quite a number of seconds. But literally, if you've then built into a lifestyle, because it's important to you, remember, you've suddenly become awake, you've suddenly become aware, you want to take radical responsibility. So you start, well, you know how much that contains and how many of those you need to drink daily. Yeah.
Mm.
I've, that's empty. So I did go for a run earlier, but the point is that when you're aware of it, that's great. Then you can make the changes. And then you can tick that box. But the idea isn't to suddenly dive off on like a pendulum swing and do everything all at once and then get overwhelmed and then default back to what you previously did, getting what you
Exactly.
previously got. That's as you know, the definition of insanity.
Mm.
But be kind to self. Yeah, learn and grow as you go along and find out more about yourself. That's what I believe will. It certainly served me, and it's not a destination, and it is a beautiful journey.
Well, Magnus, believe it or not, I've just looked at the time. We've been talking for an hour.
Really?
Yeah. You see,
Wow. Who would
you
have
can
known?
lose yourself in a conversation. So,
Well, thank you.
do you have a website? Do you have places for people to come and find out more about you and what you do, or do you see people as a practitioner, or
I do work with people, but it's kind of twofold. We choose, it's not just
choose who to?
one-sided. Yeah.
Right.
I always seek first to understand how I can be of service, and maybe there's certain things that they're wanting I'm not able to help them, or I can maybe flag them somewhere else.
Mm.
I have a number of websites, but really, MT Energy, metabolic typing. So if anyone does want to read a great book and understand more about nutrition, I recommend Bill Walcott's book and Trish Fahey. It's called The Metabolic Typing Diet. It's not a diet, but I think it was Doomsday that the book company wouldn't produce Bill's book unless he put diet in it. It's understanding, again, the understanding about locations and genetics and blah blah blah. It's not complicated. You can do a test on there. What works for you. But so metabolic typing and hair tissue mineralized, those are the basics that I offer with people, and then they were able to understand where we are and where we move forward. And obviously, as a director of my own companies to do with supplements, I also have those. But really, my thing is, what I wanted from this is just to be given the wonderful space with yourself, just to share what I believe are simple, basic information, so that people can be reminded and hopefully make some changes and benefit from it. Because I've seen it over the years with the courses that I've run and the presentations I've given. And it's nice to share solutions as opposed to, look what's happening over there. Oh, it's another virus or whatever. It's just like, or whatever other scaremongering is going on. Those things will continue, but really these are more to do with empowering people. And I think that can certainly work through education. And I did some calculations years ago, over 350,000 on my education, and it continues. It doesn't stop.
No.
So that's more than anything what I wanted, was just to provide people with that information to say, look, just go forth with it and,
see how it goes.
Responsibility and benefit from it.
Well, you've certainly done that, Magnus, and it's been a fascinating conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
An hour.
As indeed, I'm sure all my wonderful viewers have, and I dare say they will comment down in the comments below, in the comment box below. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
It's been real good fun, and to meet you on the pier, the North Pier in Blackpool.
Yeah, well, I will be seeing you and Julie again, I'm sure. It was
I'm sure.
Delight.
Absolutely. But in the meantime, as far as this recording goes, or this presentation, I need to draw that to a close. So a big thanks to Magnus. A thank you to the audience for watching. I'll be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests in due course. In the meantime, keep yourself healthy. Think about what you eat, and make sure you keep your attention where you want it and not where somebody else wants it. Until the next time, from Magnus and I, goodbye.